Hello. Well, it is Monday, August the 1st, and it's less than 24 hours since Sarina Weigman led England out at Wembley Stadium to beat Germany 2-1 in extra time to win the European Championship. Nancy, it was an incredible event in so many ways. It was a tremendous event, sporting occasion. But let's just remind everybody just how it panned out, because, as I said, England won 2-1. If you missed that, I don't think many people would have missed it, because the story alone garnered so much coverage around the world. There was a fantastic attendance. It was a record. It was 87,192 people actually attended, just short of, I think there was 8 people short for the record for Wembley Stadium. And the tournament overall for the past 3 weeks, the attendance was 574,875. In 2017, when the Netherlands won, that was 240,055 over the duration of the tournament. Now, just to give you a comparison, the record for the men's Euros in 1964 was 79,115. And even more impressive, I think, because we haven't got all the figures in, was there was a peak UK audience of 17.4 million eyes watching this tournament, and it broke the 2019 Women's World Cup final of 11.7 million. But that doesn't count ESPN and other international rights holders. So safe to say, Nancy, and you were there, the scenes were absolutely fantastic. The result, of course, was fantastic for England. But this had an impact beyond anything else that the sport has achieved in the UK, but I think beyond.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, I feel like people don't really want to say it when you have a home tournament, but there's so much hinging on a home team in women's football. Like in men's football, there's the fact that they can win in a home stadium, but there's less importance on it, I think, in comparison to women's football. When you've got a home nation playing in a tournament, there's a real opportunity for them to convert a lot of people that don't normally watch women's football, whether that's women that don't like football and just want to start watching it, or like just male non-football fans, or male football fans or female football fans that don't watch women's football and can be converted into watching women's football as well. There's just so much opportunity, because when a home nation is doing well at a tournament, just everyone gets behind it regardless of whether they liked football before or not. So I think, there was that pressure on them. But the tournament just kind of went the best it possibly could for England. And then, to end it at a final in Wembley with, like you said, a record crowd in attendance, a record viewing figures on TV. And like you said, that number didn't count ESPN and other countries. And it also didn't count the amount of people watching in pubs and together in front rooms, in groups, because I know a lot of people I know that didn't get to the stadium when I watched it in a pub, and the atmosphere there was incredible. So probably even more millions than that TV viewing figure showed. It was probably a lot higher than it actually was. And it was such a massive, massive moment, just to have England win on a global stage and to show that women can play football well. It was a really, really exciting match, and a worthy of people's time, I think, and investment. I'm hoping that will change it forever. Whether that's media staying on for the rest of women's football, for the Women's Super League when it starts next month, whether that's brands seeing the value in women's football and wanting to invest, whether it's fans turning up to matches or watching on TV, and like right down to, grassroots teams like girls wanting to play football and actually being given the chance, like the ability to. So whether that's, girls football, more girls football in PE at schools, or more grassroots clubs just in local areas, just things like that. It's just such a, it could just be an absolutely groundbreaking moment for women's football. And I think by extension, women's sport, in the UK, and hopefully in the world as well. If you have places leading change, it encourages others to do the same as well. So hopefully it can have a global impact as well.
Yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of responsibility, as you say, comes down to, I mean, it's got to come from the grassroots, but it's down to lots of people that are stakeholders in this in one shape or way or form. It is a whole, you know, population of people that are, you know, have the ability now to keep the ball in play, no pun intended, but to keep the ball in play and keep building women's sports. Because, you know, we talked about those figures just now, how it is growing exponentially. It is growing, but we must not drop the ball. And that's really, really, really important in sports generally. But for girls who've been impressed by watching, you know, these women play on this kind of world stage, to see that, you know, they too can do it. But we need to facilitate them, as you say, with venues, with facilities at all levels of sport. And we need the public now to not just watch a final at Wembley or on TV or wherever, but to be watching it, you know, in the league, the WSL, whatever that is in whatever country, to be, you know, going to these games on a regular basis now and, you know, support those local teams, because all of those teams in the WSL will have an England player on them, and some have a few. And your team Arsenal has a few. So, you know, you can be watching those wherever you are in the country. So I hope we can keep this momentum going. This wave, you know, is riding high right now. So really, really hope so, because that was tremendous sport that we watched. And just to remind everybody that Ellie Toon, the substitute, came on again and did the business and scored in the 62nd minute. And then Chloe Kelly scored in the 110th minute in extra time after Lena Magul, the German player, had scored in the 79th minute. And I have to say on that note, Nancy, just watching this game, once we had scored and we were like, I think 15 minutes to go to full time, you knew that the Germans were going to come back. They were not going to let us get away with that.
Yeah, it was yeah, I couldn't really see the game ending 1-0 to England. I had actually predicted, I think in my head I had 2-1. I think a lot of people had a 2-1 prediction in their head, just because.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think people knew that it was going to be really close, and I think most people, predicted that England would tip it just because you know, the home advantage. Probably. So yeah, I think at 1-0, I didn't really think it was going to end like that. And then yeah, Germany kind of just went on it in the last 20 minutes. Obviously, you know, fighting for the title, you would just throw everything at it and got the equaliser. And then yeah, extra time. I think the whole match, the 90 minutes and extra time, it was so close. It was literally just like a pendulum swinging. It was really hard to call it at any point. And I think England started well and then kind of faded a bit, and then yeah, it was just very, very hard to call. But I'm glad it was England that was on the winning end in the end. Yeah,
but to be fair though, if Germany had won, they'd have deserved to win, because it was so tight, and they are very, very skilled, a young team, but a very, very skillful team. And if you were watching or following the game at all, you will know that the star striker, she was out right in the very last minute, Nancy. That huge disappointment for them. I mean, a huge disappointment, because she was such an aerial presence, and I think if she'd been fit and started as we expected, I think it might have been a different outcome. I really do think she would have scored. Because she has such a presence in the box, doesn't she? And she can get to high balls, and there was no one else like that on the team once she was out.
Yeah, I mean, I think when England would have been preparing for this final, like Pop is the main threat, I think, for Germany, and the player that all the English, like, you know, the tactics and stuff would have been kind of centered around, I think, basically stopping Pop. She has been in really incredible form for the tournament and scoring, right? Yeah, scoring all of Germany's really crucial goals. And yeah, tied on the Golden Boot with Beth Mead as well, which just shows she was probably, you know, Pop was probably one of the best players of the tournament.
Yeah, 6 goals each, weren't they, between Alex and Beth?
Yeah, and then Beth Mead got the Golden Boot because she had more assists, but obviously that it could have been a completely different story Popper played, and the scoreline might have been different. Like, she is just one of those players that makes a massive difference to a match. And it is just a side, like, obviously, as an England fan, that, you know, I'm glad we won, but it's pretty heartbreaking to see that happen for Pop, who this is actually, she is pretty kind of far on in her career, but this is actually her first Euros, because she's constantly missed out because of injury. And then, yeah, it was really great to see her kind of have this tournament where she was her first ever Euros and she was really performing well, and then to miss out on the final for injury and potentially impact your country's chances of winning the title. I think that's very, very hard to take. So I imagine she is pretty heartbroken right now. So yeah.
Well, she was at the end. I think I told you before. She took her kit bag over to the German supporters and was throwing her shirts at them. She did not have a smile on her face when she was doing that. She clearly was glad for that tournament to be over.
Yeah, I think it's just a very sad end, I think, for a very good tournament for her. But yeah, the Germany team as a whole, it's a very young but talented team, and I think we will see them be right up there in semi-finals and finals of major tournaments, starting with the World Cup next year. I think for quite a bit, they've got a very good team here. So yeah, it's definitely something impressive that they're building there.
It certainly is, and I think with what they're building and with the World Cup next year and with what Sarina has created in the team that she has now, the Lioness team, I think they're going to be very, very tough to beat. You know, I don't know. Jill Scott may be the one that does retire between now and the World Cup. We're waiting to hear that. But I think for the rest of that squad, you know, to consolidate on the confidence that they've obviously got from winning this tournament, now they're going to be a force to reckon with at the World Cup next year. And I would put more money on them right now than I would on the developing team that we have here in the US. You know, I might have to eat my words, but it's nice to be able to support my two teams. Two teams are two of the best in the world. So we'll see. Long way to go before that happens. A lot of qualifiers too, right? You've got to qualify against Luxembourg in early September. Yep. So that'll be the next chance that people can watch the Lionesses play.
Yes, that's right. So, yes, it's in Stoke in September, and then the Women's Super League season starts pretty soon after that. And in good news, a lot of clubs have announced matches at the biggest stadiums. So Liverpool will be playing at Anfield. The North London derby between Arsenal and Spurs will be played at the Emirates. Chelsea will play at the Stamford Bridge, and City at the Etihad. And actually, really, you were saying earlier about, you know, making sure that we continue this momentum. I saw on Twitter a fact that for the North London derby at the Emirates, since the final whistle yesterday, 4,000 tickets have been sold for that match, which just shows the immediate impact of people, you know, being like, right, well, that's over, and that was brilliant. So, like, what do we go and watch next? So, yeah, it does seem like the momentum is continuing, but obviously you've just got to keep it going and keep up the hard work.
Yes, at all levels. And to quote Shakespeare, one of my favourite expressions, which I've lived by, is from Julius Caesar: "We must take the current when it flows, or lose our ventures." I think this really applies in this case, and hopefully we do capitalise on this for young girls and women everywhere in sport generally. So, yeah, lots to look forward to. I should mention before we move away from football, if I may, Nancy, that Tobin Heath scored. I don't know if you noticed that. She scored first time since 2019. Wow. She's now playing for OL Reign. Yeah, and it was a nice little volley that only Tobin can do. So, yeah, that was a nice moment. And she did that in Kristen Press's backyard against Angel City. Nice. There was a nice moment when she recognised Kristen afterwards, after she scored. But yeah, that was a great game, 3-2. Now, talking about crowds, and I think we might have mentioned this before, Nancy, what Angel City FC have done in LA is really, really impressive, because it's a women's-led group for the most part that have created this new team. And they get record crowds and tremendous atmosphere, packed crowds there at their home venue in LA. And, you know, it really looks like a championship game every time you go there. I mean, I've seen from the pictures, I haven't been myself, but I have seen from the pictures that they're getting tremendous spectator figures for those games. So long may that continue. And with the new expansion teams, we're looking at a new one potentially in San Francisco that's being built by another women's group. So it's happening, Nancy. It's happening.
It is. It's very exciting. It's good to see. Yeah, so much kind of excitement building.
We had a Dutch manager coach of the Lionesses, and so that transitions us nicely to the result of the first ever women's Tour de France, which you were at the start of in Paris just over a week ago, and that finished yesterday. And the winner is Annemiek van Vleuten, a Dutch cyclist. And we should mention that Marianne Vos, you know, people would call her a goat, wouldn't they? Yeah. Marianne Vos. She won 3 stages, and she had a second and she had a third. But she didn't make it into the top 10 on the final stage, about 8 stages, but it did go to the Netherlands. They had a 1-2 there, so that was a pretty good start, except for the race, obviously, for the first time. But there was a terrible pile-up. I don't know if you noticed during the week, Nancy. Did you see the images from one crash?
Yes, I did. I think that was the one. Was it from the 5th stage? And it was like about.
Yeah, I think it was the 5th or 6th.
Yeah, it was about 30 to 40 riders, I think. I did see that. Yeah, it was pretty shocking. And I think one of the peloton had to retire with a suspected broken collarbone, I think. So it was pretty bad.
It was very bloody. I mean, you know, some of them were being patched up by their support crew on, you know, in cars as they were riding. I don't know if you saw some of the images. You know, they got back on the bikes and they were bleeding. You know, there were a lot of bloody elbows and knees. So that was really bad luck for them, but a great start, I think, for the Tour de France for women, and I look forward to that being a permanent fixture now. Looked like good crowds, Nancy, too, from the images we saw.
Yeah, I saw the same. It seems like it was just a good turnout. I mean, just a lot of enthusiasm for it, I think. It did seem like, you know, it wasn't like they were riding through kind of empty roads and stuff. There were people out constantly cheering them on. So, yeah, I think it's such an iconic event that, again, people aren't really fussed if it's men's or women's. It's just the event as a whole. And then hopefully, you know, it would have also maybe got a few more people into women's cycling in general, and they'll also go to other events and follow the whole tour as well. So, yeah, I think it seems like it was a big success, which is really good.
Yeah, good. We look forward to more of that. And another great success is the W Series in motor racing, which we've been following here, of course. Every time there's a race, we bring you news of that race, and it usually features a certain British rider called Jamie Chadwick on the top of the leaderboard at the end of the day, because she always seems to start in pole position, but she had a tricky start. I think she had some technical issues and mechanical issues in practice there in Hungary for this last weekend, the race there. But there were 4 British drivers, Nancy, in the top 10, and that was led by Alice Powell, who took over from Jamie Chadwick on top of the podium. But the Brits are strong in this W Series. Yeah, really strong. I think it's pretty amazing, I think, to see. Well, first, obviously, Chadwick is dominating, but that there are those riders and drivers kind of underneath her that are also British and doing really well. I do have to say, I think for this race, I was quite relieved that Chadwick didn't win, not because I don't like Chadwick or anything like that, but I just think it can get a bit, monotonous when it's the same person winning. It's good to have a bit of competition, I think. So I was glad to see Alice Powell win, and I think it was pretty well deserved. She's had a really good season so far. And yeah, I mean, I think it still looks like Chadwick is going to win a 3rd title, but now that she's lost a race, it would be interesting to see how that affects the rest of the season. Yeah, because right now, Alice, I think, is on 25 and Jamie on 18 points. So, yeah, it will be very interesting to see. But it's interesting why the Britons have got, there was five in the top 10. There must be a tremendous, obviously, amount of talent, but also support for this series in the UK.
Yeah, I think it is pretty well supported. I think especially when it's held with a big event like Silverstone, like it was a few weeks ago, it's kind of that... it's kind of got that, big with the Formula One as well. It's a, big British event and people like go into it. And yeah, I think the fact that, people are very proud of Chadwick and, she's kind of, even if people don't know a lot about the W Series, they probably know who Chadwick is and then they find out more about it. So yeah, I think it does have a pretty good, British following.
Well, it's all happening in England right now. We're going to move over to Birmingham and beyond, actually. The Commonwealth Games are taking place now in the UK. Started last Thursday, Nancy, while you were a little bit preoccupied with the football, but now you're going to have to turn your attention to it because it's full steam ahead now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So, like you said, now fully turning my focus to the Commonwealth Games. Women's sport literally never stops, but it's great. We love it. So yeah, it's been, from what I've seen so far, it seems to be really, really successful so far and a lot of really interesting kind of stories coming out of it. I think there was an amazing story today from the pool where Alice Tai, who's a British para swimmer, she won a gold medal in the S8 100 meters backstroke. And what's remarkable about it is that she actually had her right leg amputated just a few months ago. So she previously had been competing so she's got bilateral talipes, which is otherwise known as club feet. So she previously had both her limbs, but, she began kind of to struggle with her mobility and her injury, and she was having like a lot of increased pain. So at the start of the year, she decided to have her leg amputated because that essentially kind of would give her better quality of life almost. And then, yeah, she had to kind of reevaluate whether she'd be able to race this year, race at all, but did get back into swimming and has now won the gold medal, which is absolutely incredible. So yeah, that's really impressive. And she was speaking a bit about how she's now looking at the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. And she did miss out on the Tokyo Paralympics last year because of these issues with her legs. So it's great to see that she is now kind of back and ready to go for Paris in 2 years. Another great story that I thought was really cool was Lucy Beer. She secured Guernsey's first ever Commonwealth Games medal since 1984.
Wow, is that so? Since 19?
Yeah, so we don't know what colour it is yet, but she will be competing in the final of the women's singles bowls. So yeah, that's kind of a really great story. And then there was a bit of a controversy, a bit of a saga about in the paracycling. So there was basically the tandem sprint. Sophie Unwin and Georgia Holt of Britain were competing in that. And there were originally meant to be 4 teams, but the third team pulled out essentially. So they finished third and kind of presumed that they would get a bronze medal because of where they'd finished and the fact that, the 2 at the top were getting gold and silver. But the Commonwealth Games organisers ended up stripping them of their medal. So according to competition's rules, bronze medals will not be awarded in races which have 4 entries. So you have to have 5 teams to be able to get a medal. But they didn't tell the cyclists this. So then they thought they were going to go and get a bronze medal and they didn't. And then during the medal ceremony, they stood behind the podium and held up an English flag. And then I think they were also fined for doing that, for having that protest later. And then the Commonwealth Games Federation apologised for that subsequently. So it was all a bit of a controversy, and it does seem a bit silly that they did finished third but didn't get a bronze medal just because there wasn't enough teams in the competition. So yeah, that's a bit of a more negative story, but aside from that, it's been a really, really good game so far, and I'm looking forward to kind of having more focus on it and seeing what's happening. And I'm planning on going up to Birmingham on Wednesday for the athletics, so that should be really fun.
Yeah, I just want to mention, though, in that tandem you were talking about, the controversy, that was won by Australia's Jess Gallagher and Caitlin Ward, and I've talked to Jess in the past, we've followed her before. It seems like an Olympic Games some time ago. I think it was before Rio. We talked to her regularly. She did a video update for us. And, so she's still going strong. And she won that with her partner there, Caitlin Ward. So that's Commonwealth Games. Runs right through till when, Nancy? When does it wrap up?
So that is, I think it's the 8th of August that finishes. So next... I don't know my days of the week. Sunday? I think that's next Sunday.
No, it'll be
Monday. Okay, next Monday. So Monday the 8th. So we've got a week left of that. So I don't know if is it available to watch where you are? I imagine there's not much interest in a competition that the US isn't in.
Doesn't impact us. No, I have to resort to mainly to social media for that, unfortunately. Unless I changed my what is it you could change on the internet?
The VPN
and watched BBC. Yeah. Is it getting good coverage on the BBC?
Yeah, I mean, again, kind of what I've been watching has been more football, but it is on all over the BBC. So even if it's not on BBC 2 or 1, it's on the red button. So they've got a lot of sports on there to choose. It's all over the BBC, and if you click on the red button or go on iPlayer, they've got like basically every sport that's happening. So it is very accessible to watch. So heading up there on Wednesday for athletics should be really good. And there's a lot of sports going on. So if anyone is in a country where they are showing it, it's definitely worth watching.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we'll have more of this, of course, next week on the show too. And we're going to turn to it's a name that people will be familiar with in UFC. That's Amanda Nunes, and that was a fight that happened, a bantamweight fight that she won. She regained the title last week, Nancy. But that was a very bloody fight, wasn't it? I mean, a major MMA story, but. Just seeing those scenes was a really, really tough fight for those two women. Julianna Pena was her opponent. She was retaining, or Nunes was retaining the bantamweight title, but she had to fight for it, didn't she? My goodness. Yeah,
it was. So I didn't watch this live, but caught up with it the next morning. And it was a brutal fight. I think, it's quite a intense rivalry between Nunes and Pena, because Pena took off. She beat Nunes last year. It was a massive upset. I think people called it one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. They kind of had like a revenge match, and Nunes won this time. So, it was. She really kind of was dominated, and it was. Yeah, I think if you're a bit faint-hearted or a bit queasy, don't watch it, because it was very bloody. Yeah. Very, very bloody indeed. All right, well, we've got one more story. It's an update on the story we brought you last week from Rugby Football Union in the UK, Nancy. It was a vote that they were making on their gender policy, which we kind of expected would go this way, but what was the outcome? Yes, they did. They voted in favour to do this, so to ban transgender women from competing in women's rugby. So the voting was 33 in favour, 26 against, and 2 abstaining. So I think from the kind of commentary that I've followed on Twitter and stuff, I think that is actually maybe a bit closer than people expected. So I think it shows that it's a very divided council, because 7 votes, that's not an overwhelming majority. I think it seems like the decision. I noticed Poppy Cleall, who plays for Saracens and England, is one of England's best players. She was the Six Nations player of the tournament last year. She was being very critical about it on Twitter, saying she tweeted from one of the most inclusive sports to one of the least in 7 votes. So,
I saw that.
Yeah, this decision is definitely not something that is kind of backed by rugby in its entirety. And I think the vote just shows that it's obviously very divided.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there'll be more of that to come, and we'll keep you posted here on the show. Well, Nancy, I think that kind of wraps it up. There's so much going on. You've got to turn your attention now fully to the Commonwealth Games. A little bit of a rest from football, although we've got the NWSL season well underway here now after they had a week's break. And so we've got lots to look forward to there. I'm going to try and get to some games myself for my team, Washington Spirit. What is it? A couple of weeks? When is it? 2 or 3 weeks? How long have we got to go before the US Open starts here in New York? So, that'll be here before we know it.
Yeah, I mean, it all just comes around so fast, doesn't it? But it's brilliant. I think there is a slightly quiet period in mid-August when I'm going to go on holiday.
Oh, are you?
But
when you'll be back in time, I think it's the 29th of August that the US Open starts through.
Yeah, I'll be back for then. I purposely picked a quiet period in the calendar. Just thinking, looking ahead, I was like, the Euros for a month and then Commonwealth Games, I'm going to need a holiday after that. And right now I'm happy with that decision. Not to complain about the past month because it's been absolutely incredible. But it's also good to have a break sometimes as well.
Absolutely. All right. Will you be playing sport while you take a break?
I don't know, to be honest. Well, the football team I play for currently are on a summer break, so I presume they'll probably be coming back sometime around late August, early September. So probably. I'm always doing a bit of sport, so I'm sure I'll be doing something.
Good. Well, I'm still biking. Still trying to get fit. Weight training begins in earnest tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. sharp, so long may that last. Get me stronger, so we'll get ready for the ride in the fall, doing another big ride with Marcy Cornegay, who's currently on the Pacific Crest Trail. And I just heard from her, Nancy, there's an update. Apparently the wildfires in Northern California and Southern Oregon mean that they can't go through that area.
Oh, really?
It's huge wildfires. Yes, they've had to turn around and go back to Lake Tahoe, and that's where she is right now.
Gosh.
I'm going to be speaking to her later this afternoon. They're safe, but the fires are so bad and so devastating that they couldn't go through. They're going to have to regroup and then decide which way they go to circumnavigate those fires and to pick up with the trail a little bit further north. Yeah.
Gosh, that must be quite frustrating, I imagine, to have to change.
Yes. When you prepare to do something like this, 2,650 miles, and you get thwarted for... that's happened to me once going around Australia, and the flooding cut out part of my trip. I was going around from north to the west coast, and that got interrupted. So I know that it is very frustrating. But people are losing their homes, their livelihoods, and properties with these fires. So there's a lot more at stake for some people. But anyway, I'll be catching up with Marcy, and as I said, I'm going to continue training while she's doing that, and hopefully we'll be doing another big bike ride in the fall. So stay tuned for that. In the meanwhile, Nancy, just remind everybody where they can find your writings.
Yep, so everything I write goes on Give Me Sport Women, which you can find us on Twitter at Give Me Sport W, and I'm on Twitter myself at Nancy_Gillen, and my Instagram handle is NancyGillen_sport.
All right. And we're, of course, at WiSports on social media and at wisports.com. So, Nancy, did you get a day off? Or you didn't actually work at the final yesterday, did you? You were a spectator. You were just being a professional fan.
Yeah, a professional fan. Yeah. Well, I was working in the morning, and then I was doing filming, actually, before and after. With work, so I was not writing, but I was doing some filming. But I got to be in the crowd for the match itself, which was amazing. But yeah, no, my next day off I think is probably Friday or Saturday. So got to keep going, but it's all fun and games. So
it's all fun and games. All right, we'll enjoy the Commonwealth Games, and we'll catch up with you again next week, where we bring you another episode of the WiSP Sports Desk. So until then, from Nancy Gillen, from myself, Chris Stafford, thanks for listening, and continue to enjoy your sport and spread the word.